Well, Salim, once again, President Trump has demonstrated his leadership ability with a tweet that went out this morning saying, "We cannot let the curse be worse than the problem itself. At the end of the 15-day period, we will make a decision as to which way we want to go." And you picked up on that on your Facebook page. You said, quote, "This is the context in which President Trump has now indicated that he will not allow the American economy to be destroyed in the mad pursuit of flattening the curve of the pandemic brought about by a virus that at best is somewhat more lethal than the many flu viruses by which people get afflicted every flu season," unquote. The economy now seems to be the attention of a lot of people, Salim, with trillions of dollars being spent or trying to be spent in the case of the United States with the CARES Act, blocked by the Democrats in a 47-47 vote, with many Republicans now, 5 Republicans I understand, self-quarantined because of contracting, or at least testing positive for the virus. So let's turn to the economy and how it is being destroyed in face of this epidemic, and whether or not the cure is worse than the disease. What do you have to say, Salim?
Well, it is very striking, isn't it, Robert? We talked about it Sunday mid-morning, and about this whole situation we raised, and I was pointing out in our conversation that I'm not alone. We are not alone as we were conversing, the two of us. So there's a lot of voices that has been raised in the United States, serious voices in the media, that we have to pause and think about whether the remedy, the cure that is being effected is possibly worse than the disease itself. And lo and behold, as you just read the tweet from President Trump, he has come out and precisely said that that this lockdown, shutdown is for 15 days, and then at the end of the 15 days, he will evaluate, and he also indicates that the economy is a very serious matter in that sense. Well, I mean, Robert, when we talk about the economy, we're talking about people. We're talking about us. We're talking about the common people, whether they're affected, infected, potentially infected, or what have you, but who have to worry about meeting their obligation, paying their rent, and getting food on the table for themselves and their family. And then the other entire effect of what this sort of economic shutdown to flatten the curve, and we can come back and talk about what is this flattening the curve is all about, because that's been the goal and the push of those on the medical side, particularly led by Dr. Fauci of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, who is the front man in this pandemic. And you can see him in the White House briefing that when he takes the podium, and he has been almost insistent, he and his team have been insistent about flattening the curve so that the rate of infection does not overwhelm the medical system, and that you delay the treatment or the spread of the infection by flattening the curve. And so the medical system, the hospitals, the doctors, the frontline healthcare workers, then you buy the time for them that they can then deal with the escalating number of people infected.
It makes sense to me.
So, pardon me?
I said that makes sense.
Well, that precisely is what is being worked out. I mean, and that's what President Trump has gone along with his experts around him, that is, especially the medical experts around him, and has agreed with them to go. But on the other hand, is the question of the economy. Robert, I mean, let's get it down to the very simplest. Life is about trade-offs. It's always about trade-offs. Um, we teach this, we learn this from our childhood, that you cannot have everything that you want from your Santa wish list on Christmas night, So you have to choose what is it that you want that can then be given to you or that Santa will bring for you. So trade-off, you know, um, the flattening of the curve, getting the medical health system to be able to deal with what is the assumption that this might be a pandemic, that this coronavirus that has let loose upon the world will possibly, and a model here, it is a modeling. The scariest modeling is, in terms of numbers, is the Spanish flu that came about in the middle of World War One, 1917, and by the time it was over, towards 1920, the casualties were in tens of millions. On the low end of the estimate is 50 million. On the high end of the estimate is 100 million. So that's the modeling, that's the peak. Chinese workers were brought in thousands by the British Empire, by the British, it was colonial empire, was brought into Europe to dig up the war trenches. It was their work to build up the war trenches or dig out the war trenches, and they were the carriers. They were infected. Now, is there some connection here? Well, I mean, we are all talking about, the connecting the dots. Well, Italy, that is worse affected in this pandemic right now, as you and I speak. The Italians are, in terms of number, just behind the Chinese. I have the numbers right in front of my eyes that I quickly made a note of it. China's figures is in the range of 81,000, and the Italian figures are in the range of 64,000. China's death numbers, and most of them located in Hubei province, is 3,200, 3,200 in that neighborhood, and the Italian figure is almost three times that number. It is over 6,000, 6,100 close to. So there it is. And why in this Lombardy region? And we talked about it. That's where the Chinese had invested, and their workers were coming in to work in the garment industry, in the leather industry, and so on and so forth. So you can clearly see, as you can draw the connection about where origin, incubation, transmission has taken place. But coming back to, in the case of the United States, where we began with, Trump has said that 15 days, and we're going to go back to rethinking about the strategy and economy. Well, it's a matter of trade-off. Flattening the curve in a manner, by the time you achieve it, you might kill the economy. You might create a whole new spiral of problems to deal with. Unemployment. What will be the number of the GDP that's wiped out? It's already being estimated that if we are not back to work, as Americans are not back to work by middle of April, 1/5 of the GDP might have been gone away. The desperate attempt in the sense of getting the package ready, which is what you were hinting at, the coronavirus aid relief, emergency relief that was proposed, that has been negotiated by the Democrats and Republicans in the Congress, with President Trump's people engaged in it. The $1.6 trillion package for the pandemic relief. And that is now stuck because the Democrats have their wish list that they want to push through this package that has nothing to do with dealing with the pandemic crisis.
This goes back to what you and I were talking about in a recent video of pretext. The Democrats, the globalists, the socialists, the collectivists, They use any crisis, as Rahm Emanuel said, not letting it go to waste, to try to put forward their agenda. And I understand that the Democrats with this CARES bill, this CARES Act, want to add on some substantial Green New Deal provisions, as well as some labor provisions having nothing to do with the intent of the act, which is, of course, as you said, pandemic relief. So I was thinking as well that this delay would also benefit, or at least in the minds of the Democrats, in an election year, showing, and of course with the mainstream media on their side, they will try to say that the Republicans, and especially President Trump, were unable to do anything to relieve the suffering economically of the American people. So do you think there's a bit of that?
Oh, not only a bit of it, all of it, I would say. Because what with the Democrats, it is about politicizing anything and everything that they can touch. It is the reverse of King Midas, who touch anything and it turned into gold. For Democrats, it is touch anything and it is the progressive agenda. And so what they're pushing, and as we know, as some of us who are following this discussion that is taking place in the Congress, and words are leaking out. I have been trying to catch up with that information, and some of the information that is out in the public domain is that the $1.6 trillion package that the Democrats have now holding up as hostage is they want to control the spending side of it, or they want to put the wish list on there so that the White House will be in a sense coerced or forced to direct the spending in the direction in which the Democrats want it to go. And some of the thing that they're insisting upon is, for instance, taking care of or eliminating student loans. Well, that has already been talked about by President Trump, that people who are paying their loans, they will be given relief. We're talking about this in Canada too, and banks are coming up to find ways to give relief to the small lenders and to the small creditors and so on and so forth, businesses. So in the case of student loans in America, that is in the package, but the Nancy Pelosi and Schumer and their people want it to be cleaned out. That was a part of the debate that is going on in the Democratic primary. And that was a promise that the socialist, Marxist, communist Bernie Sanders have been pushing in his bid for being the Democratic nominee. That is universal Medicare, wiping out the student loan, the Green Deal, zeroing out the greenhouse gas emission. Well, these are the things. Now that Bernie Sanders is not going to be the nominee of the Democratic Party, it is going to be Joe Biden will be the nominee. But the package, the policy package that Joe Biden will be offering, that is the Democratic Party will be offering, will be no different than the package that Bernie Sanders was pushing. Because here the politics is that they want to be sure, that is the Democrats want to be sure, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the whole lot of them want to be sure that Bernie Sanders supporters don't sit out the election. Mm-hmm. And give it over in that sense. Either don't sit out the election, or enough of them cross over and vote for Trump. Okay, so in a sense, this $1.6 trillion package that they worked overnight during this weekend to get the thing going, to get the American economy going, to get what over the weekend the White House was talking about, that getting $1,000 check in the hand of every single American, immediately. It's a package that was being rushed through so that people have something in their hand and then can come back in 2 weeks' time. President has already now signaled in 15 days' time they will be looking at this. And the Democrats are bargaining, as you point out, as we have discussed, never let a crisis go to waste. And this crisis is to push their progressivist agenda, which, by the way, progressive agenda in American politics is Marxist agenda, communist agenda, and that's what it is all about. I mean, in the 2008 crisis, Obama won that election when John McCain sat out the period. He didn't go into the primary. He sat it out. Obama won the election, and what was the first thing that they did when they came to office after the inauguration? They pushed Obamacare, which nobody even read what would be the cost, and that's what they pushed.
Nobody could read it. It was this thick.
That's right. It was, and Nancy Pelosi said when she was asked, what is in the bill, she said, you pass it and then you can go and read it, and then you'll see, you can find out what is in the bill. So this is what is being played out, and it raises again the whole question about the seriousness of this pandemic. What is this all about? The numbers have given us a different sense of it. And you and I have talked about this before. By the way, I also want to bring out something again, the maliciousness of political leaders who are in it for themselves in every crisis. So here we have what we learned over the weekend was senior members of the Senate, that is long-serving senators, 4 terms, 5 terms, 6 terms serving senators, such as Senator Burr, Republican of North Carolina, Senator Inhofe, Republican of Oklahoma, Senator Dianne Feinstein, Democrat of California, and a newly appointed senator from Georgia, Senator Kelly Loeffler, whose husband is the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange. All of these senators were briefed. This is Senator Burr is the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. So they were given the confidential briefing in February, mid-February, about the coronavirus pandemic and how it is going to affect the economy if it turns out what was being expected. And guess what these senators did? They got out of the briefing and they went and engaged in insider trading.
Well, they sold stocks, didn't they? Yes.
They dumped their stocks before the public got to know, so that they cleared out of the market. And as we know, the market has just gone into a crash over the last couple of weeks. So there you have it. There you have these people with their hands right in the piggy bank, first about themselves before they're thinking about the American people or people anywhere whose lives are at stake over here. God knows if the unemployment numbers hit what the people are expecting. In the case of the United States, the numbers are astronomical. Something like 2 million people will be unemployed by mid-April if the things don't go back into operation, if the economy doesn't move into gear. Now, given the opioid crisis in America, the mental health situation, the homeless situation, we are seeing the terrible pictures from California, from LA, from San Francisco, from Seattle and Washington, from New York City. The homelessness, I mean, this is almost like I was born in a city, where people lived on the street, Calcutta, famous for people living on the streets. But this is America we are talking about. So the homeless crisis, the opioid crisis, the mental health crisis, what will be the social impact of all of this coming together in a head, in terms of family breakups, in terms of, again, people falling sick, the mental stress, suicide rate spiking up, especially among those who have given up hope, the young and who doesn't see anything on the horizon, that they have any expectation of what their lives are going to be like. So we are dealing with a really here much more than coronavirus or COVID-19, and so it is absolutely right on the part of President Trump to have tweeted out that yes, we have gone in this direction, but there is the economy, that is the people, that is, the question of trade-off. Are we going to flatten the curve of coronavirus infected people in a manner in which we will come out of it with our entire economy shattered and broken, and we in a worse situation? And that isn't the case of the United States of America, which is the strongest and the greatest power.
But what I got from the tweet from President Trump was that he was trying to give a sense of closure, to let people know that this will not last forever, that there is hope, however audacious that might be. But anyway, let's leave it there, Salim, and we'll get back again really soon and talk about Canada and Donald Trump's leadership.
Yeah, I think it is very important. I mean, to at least give some consideration to the man in the White House. Thank you.
Thank you, Salim.